Hello, my name is Alfredo. Welcome to my piano spacetime. In this video you will find my study discussion about Johann Sebastian Bach's Allemande in E Flat Major from the 4th French Suite. This video might be of your interest if you intend to study this piece at the piano. I will present a step-by-step tutorial, providing on one side very practical suggestions that I hope might facilitate your work in learning and building up your mastery of this piece. And I'll try also to leave a few hints to address your attention and your work to that direction that will allow to move up from the mere performing of the notes to actually expressing the beautiful music folded inside this score according to your own sensitivity and taste. To warm up, let's play part of the piece and then I'll continue with my considerations. So we are in front of an Allemande, and you might know that Allemande is one of the 4 antique dances that are the constant presence in the traditional suites and partitas. And so you might even know that this set of 4 dances intend to provide an alternation of character, of spirit. In fact, these 4 dances are the Allemande, the Currente, the Sarabande, and the Jig. The Allemande is on the side of the, intense expressivity with a moderato tempo. Then the Currente will be instead more fast, as the name even suggests. The Sarabande is typically a very slow, kind of heavy and even relentless rhythm, a slow dance, and at the end the jig to express intense vivacity with a very fast and sometimes even breathless tempo. But let's go back to our Allemande. So as I said, this is a piece that inside a suite is traditionally expected to be played with a moderate tempo. And I love the moderate tempo expression, moderato, because it is in itself a world of possibility. As in rough terms it means neither slow nor fast. And you understand that this being said, there is really quite a wide range of possibilities. Well, this being said, I believe that if we intend to play this Allemande with the rest of the suite, in my own opinion, it's probably very adequate to stay on this lower side of the moderato range of tempos, so that will create a nice contrast when moving on with the Currente. Instead, if we play the Allemande on its own, probably, at least according to my taste, it would be nice sometimes to explore what the expressivity of this piece can provide in moving up a bit our speed and playing it a bit like a prelude. And one last general consideration before starting with our practical tools. As you see, as in the case of all these old dances, the Allemande is built basically as a diptych. So I borrowed this word from the visual arts, sculptorial and painting arts. So a diptych, that means a work composed by two halves. Each half is having its own stand in a way, but eventually the piece of music is expressed in its whole when the two halves are put together as integrate with each other. So let's go to work with the score, and let's see my ideas about how to build up our mastery of the difficulties and notes of this piece. As usual, when you start from zero to learn a piece, it's a good thing, perhaps after trying, reading roughly what's there inside, to split it in chunks. And the length of these chunks is something that is not necessarily the same for everybody, depending on your level, on the complexity of the piece. So it might be a couple of bars or a single bars, perhaps when the texture becomes particularly intricate, and sometimes even less than that when things become truly difficult. So I think I will arrange my presentation splitting the piece more or less in chunks of a couple of bars, but I won't care to be strict on this. Really, I will follow what the convenience and the practical effectiveness of the reasoning will suggest. I like to start with the left hand, so let's say the first bars, and we have what we have to say here. Well, let's be aware that the bass, despite being very simple, is fundamentally important in the expressivity of the music, because it's providing the base, the foundation, the richness of the sound. So let's take care about being sufficiently assertive with our incidentally weaker fingers that are in charge to take these notes for the bass. And also be aware that when you go in the lower end of the keyboard, your actions start becoming slightly heavier, typically in pianos, and so even if you intend to play piano, but calibrate a sufficient assertiveness of your touch, of your arm action as appropriate, so that there is, however, a full sound coming out. As you see, we have a simple line in the tenor. There is not much to say for the time being, as basically the first finger is in charge of playing all these notes, but we'll come back to this in a moment after having now worked a bit with the right hand. For the right hand, there are a couple of different possibilities in terms of fingering. I am in particular referring to what starts happening from the second half of measure 2, let's say, and then measure 3. You might notice in the picture here in red what I like to use, that is a little bit strange. Perhaps it requires a bit of studying, of accomplishing awareness to be fluid, but it has the advantage for me to allow an easier performance of some ornaments in case you like to apply them. And typically I like to add ornaments in the repeat of the halves. However, you can see I also maintain the black numbers that are instead the fingering suggested by this particular edition. just work out according to what you find more comfortable for you. So I played note by note until this point. I think that a good idea, also in view of memorization, if you intend to work along that way, but however, always helpful to, how to say, increase your familiarity with what you have under the fingers, is then to spend a couple of repetitions of this chunk in building up chords with the notes, and also looking them so that you might try to recognize familiar chords and patterns. And so this has some physical benefits in terms of getting the piece under your hand and fingers, but for me it also has a very nice effect in terms of highlighting the expressivity of the harmonies. And in a way, I believe doing this will build something in the background of our unconscious mind in terms of what these harmonies are providing in terms of intensity and musical message. So let's see what it means. As I said, I feel we don't have to overdo this because it has certain benefits, but also it carries some little problems. In particular, we don't have to think to kind of shift from one, how to say, broken chords position to the other in a rigid digital way, 0 1 0 1 on off on off. It's not the technique we shall perform. I think something like instead, an important part of our work right since the beginning is to activate the entire action of our playing mechanism that basically goes from the shoulders, the R is the first important lever, until the fingers. And so we really have to spend some time in exploring what our freedom in action is bringing in terms of benefits to fluidity, to sound control or on each note. And I believe that this sound control, this fluidity is greatly improved when you let free your action to work, because each finger might need some specific help with the action of the remaining parts of the playing mechanism in terms of drop, push, or rotation, to say the simplest and more evident factors. So I try to exaggerate a bit what my physical mechanism is suggesting me to do in order to reach each note in the best way possible. And notice, especially when you reach the weaker fingers, basically the tendency is to try to align without being rigid and strict, but to search for a sort of alignment between the arm line and the finger tip without breaking it up with strange, zigzagging configurations. And in order to do this, you realize that you need to move up, down, right, left your arm and hand. Let's let's put together the hands and let's go back for a second to playing with chords, really to enjoy the harmonies that are very nice and warm in this piece. So while we memorize the patterns, we also start savoring the beauty of the music that Bach delivered to us. As I said, a couple of times, and then we go back to the actual score as it is written. And once again, I say that I think it's helpful, time to time to wake up in a way and come away from the score, try to see what you remember and looking at what your hands are doing to become aware about some particular moving patterns, and sometimes seeing it, you also realize what adjustment is convenient to be done because you see what's happening physically to your fingers, hand and arm. And the last thing on your study I want to underline is that, when we work note by note, that we inevitably have to do, I believe, to learn the piece, but there is an easy risk to unconsciously really give to each note the same role in the line that is completely wrong. In the same way that a good actor, or when we talk naturally, we are naturally inclined to apply very subtle adjustments, emphasizing certain words rather than others. So in music, it's basically the same thing. We don't have to think that we are hammering each keys to give the same intensity and duration. No. But if we do not pay attention in our work of not exaggerating in the note by note approach, we risk eventually to build up in time an approach of the music that is rather mechanic. And what to do practically? Well, I feel, as I said in many other videos, a very, in my opinion, enlightening teacher is giving a practical, simple way. That is, let's remove all the secondary notes. Secondary means typically the ones that do not occur on the main beats of our rhythm. Because, if you dance, for instance, you know very well that your body is not engaged in the same way on each of those thousand sounds that come out from the music, but there are the strong beat that requires a specific action, perhaps with the, heavier and stronger parts of the body. Instead, the other secondary ornamental notes are just kind of picked up along the way. So this means and let's think about the tempo we would like to express. Of course, we don't expect to understand our own tempo immediately. We have to explore that with a trial and error and adjustments process. So I think for a second at my intended tempo. And insist 3, 4, 5 times with this very radical, simplified version of the main notes in your musical flow, and then you start here and there to fill up. now we also realize that the tenor that we left aside for a while, that is playing the simple notes, is very interestingly cooperating with the contralto or the soprano, however, the right hand for that melodic line, because the line is not really, is instead so for the first three notes, the contralto is kind of playing with the soprano, the tenor is playing with the soprano or the contralto, before then taking its own way in parallel. So be aware and try to find a musical coherence between the note that you play with the one and what you are doing with the right hand. We'll come back on this a little later to underline a couple of things. So let's move on. Once again. The tenor, we understood, is quite important, and here is becoming even more important because it's mirroring the nice line that the right hand is playing. And I invite you to really deeply savor the incredible expressivity and richness of this figure in the right hand. There are endless ways to express them, so find your own rendition of that. It could be or I will never end, you will never end. Explore what you can do with these simple notes. This is the beauty of Baroque music. Alright, so let's just recap those working methods that I already introduced. So, playing in chords, it is a little difficult for you to grasp the chord right away, building up by holding notes. And remember to activate, to let work freely your body possibilities that will help the weak finger in their actions. So we have to search the right amount of rotation, of alignment to apply, because when you stay underneath the right alignment, you become stiff. When you go over the right amount, you mess it up, right? So our work is really to explore and monitoring our feeling. When you play nicely, you hear nicely, but you also feel nicely, because it's a kind of physical miracle to link your physical action with the physical action in the instrument, and then the sound that comes to our ears. It comes very natural to, I don't know, to activate a circular motion of the elbow in a way. Monitoring the prehensile action of the fingers, it is very important, but shouldn't work by itself generally. And then let's isolate the main notes on the important bits of the rhythm that is called by Abby Whiteside outlining. Maybe a little faster. Let's move on. Left hand, I believe, is in charge conveniently to take the G. A little slower. And don't be worried about a physical legato. I think just search for fluidity and then you can easily adjust later if you like the legato to reduce the physical staccato, but especially be free and fluid. Right hand. Here I recommend pay attention, a physical connection between the F and the E flat, depending on the fingering, might be against the fluidity, a musical expression. So calibrate eventually a tiny staccato in favor of relaxation of the action. When I go a tempo, if I calibrate well the lifting and falling of the arm, I can compensate and express a better fluidity rather than sticking with physical legato that is really creating issues. And then if you like to use the pedal, you can also take advantage of that. Let's pause for a while and let's now become aware about the particular, composing technique that Bach is now in full expressly here and will be actually the main component of the fabric of the music of this piece. So Bach in the right hand is playing with that polyphonic melody way of writing, or melodic polyphonic, right? Because if you have a look at this line, could be actually like we have a simple melody that is flowing that could be played by a single voice, and instead Bach does two things. He breaks up it in little chunks to create the potential for a dialogue, and then by holding the last notes at times of the brief segments of one line, it creates an harmonic expression, and it's quite peculiar, and we don't find it in all works. Let's see again. So we don't have a person talking or singing, but we have a duo, a dialogue, and we should become aware of this and then explore in which way we want to exploit the nature of this writing. I remember I heard from a musician saying that Bach has taken this from the French school of composition. Well, just as a brief digression, if we take, for example, that famous François Couperin's work that you find even in my videos, we find actually this composition style applied there in full, right? This actually would be simplifying that. So each hand would play two individual melodies in the way I did, removing the holding of the notes, of certain notes that Couperin wrote. And this way of writing is quite peculiar compared to the more traditional polyphonic way of writing, for example, that we find So we see that here we have three voices patterns where each voice is actually overlapping with the other with its own line that goes independently. And Bach liked here and there to instead move to this particular way of handling polyphony. Just a couple of other examples. That prelude in F major from the Well-Tempered Clavier second book. Or again, C sharp major. In a way, to me, introduces a kind of additional degree of expressivity and warmth in the music. So be aware of this. First of all, enjoy that exploring way of expressing that, and let's move on. As you're noticing, while learning, I start with the legato, but then we can introduce very much, according to the style of Baroque music, certain staccato, portato, in the way we like. There are countless possibilities. Notice here the little trick with the thumb. I go there again. Without being concerned in holding the note too long. However, we are at the piano, so the sound is fading, and it's not really necessary, I think, for the musical expressivity of this point. I played it with the right hand, but it's not probably what I do when I perform it. Again, and let's build the chords. So we reached the end of the first half of our diptych. So a couple of comments here. The repetition, I believe, as many other musicians, is not a moment of copying and pasting what we've done, I believe, to express in the best way the music, but instead is the opportunity to present the same material with another perspective, and there are countless ways of doing that. For example, let's start saying that we might play the first time with the una corda pedal pressed and then playing the second time, releasing that perhaps at a certain point or since the beginning, or vice versa. We can play in the first half exactly as it is written, and then in the repetition we can introduce like some ornaments here and there. We can play in the first half say with a free phrasing with the jumps like, and in the second half perhaps instead rendering these lines in a more cello-like expressivity. And similarly, in the right hand, we can, perhaps the first time, be more regular with this melodic polyphony, kind of hiding that, and being more explicit later with subtle, I would say, hesitations or little modifications in the musical flow to underline the entering of a voice after the other. So the first time might be the second time more. Really, this is ground for you to explore, because you have now to find your taste, your ideas, and to acquire dexterity and mastery to express them. Now, going on with the second half will be basically to just apply once again this way of learning the piece that I introduced so far. So I want now to spend a few minutes on a apparently tiny detail, but I think is very important in our technical work at the piano. And this is about our fourth finger here and here. That is quite a peculiar fellow in our team of players. In fact, I think that you noticed that often when we reach a note with the fourth finger, we easily slide in some kind of pitfall and we lose sound or regularity and so on. And let's try to understand why is that and what remedies would be available. Well, when we play with the number 2 or with number 3, either with the finger itself, with the prehensile action, we see that if we learn to the right position, the classical position at the piano of the end, that doesn't mean it's a position which we have to stick on, but it's a kind of reference point to start with, and sometimes we can lower it, higher up it, but the classical position is of the end that is kind of holding an imaginary ball underneath your fingers, right? Imagine that you have a baseball ball under the hand, so your curvature is kind of embracing that ball. And when I use number 2, number 3, my configuration is this, right? But look at what happens, I guess, for the large majority of us, if not for all of us, due to the anatomy that we have in our hand. When I use my fourth finger and activate his prehensile action, or even I drop the arm if you prefer, you will notice that the knuckle pops up, right? Something that doesn't happen in the same way with the 2 and 3. So what it means that our hand structure there has a soft spot, right? And this soft spot, if we are not aware and if we don't counteract to compensate that, is creating that pitfall. Do you realize that, the principle is that, like, imagine you have a heavy box on the floor, right? And so a good way to push the box is to find the wall. If you have it, you press yourself against the wall and then you push the box, right? The wall is taking the reaction of the box on your hands, according to Isaac Newton's nice principle that to any action there is a exact action contrary in the opposite direction, that is still holding true for us. And the same thing happens at the piano. So when I press a key, there is this more or less tiny force delivered to the key that is also acting in the opposite direction on my finger, right? And the knuckle of the hand are actually now acting as the wall, so taking that force here on the hand structure. And you notice that the knuckles of the 2 and 3 are holding the position, so are a good wall. Instead, the knuckle of the 4th is a sort of soft wall. So imagine you want to push that box using the wall as a reaction item, but the wall cedes, C-E-D-E, it's a soft wall. Your energy is loosened, and rather than pushing the box, you push yourself backward. And this is the same thing. You think you are delivering energy to the key, but in a tiny fraction of a second, where you thought to have energy delivered, instead you dissipate part of that force, of that energy, in the seeding of the knuckle of the 4th finger. And for example, let's see if I pick up some spot where this is kind of evident. Let me see, measure 2. With my fingering, this D is taken by the 4th, and if I don't pay attention, I have this losing sound effect. It is something almost instantaneous, if it is the right word in English, because playing the piano is a matter of subtle actions and accurate movements. I think I can deliver energy as I did with my 1, with my 3, and even with the 5th. The 5th is kind of helped by the position it is if we play with the rotation of the wrist, of the hand, by the arm. But the poor 4th finger is there hidden with this soft knuckle there. And so we have, I would say, 2 basic tools. The one is to be aware and the kind of overdo the prehensile action of the 4th, because it's good, the 4th finger, in doing that. If I take this little notebook and I hold with the 4th finger, or if you pinch yourself or your friend with the 4th finger, you can apply considerable action as long as you have reached the point when the knuckle has reached his, hard position, right? The seeding is ceased. So we have to be aware of applying a tiny overaction in the 4th so that we reach more quickly the point of the stop of the knuckle, and that ideally should occur when we are reaching the point in the key action where the sound is produced. Of course, it's something to explore, to work on, rather than to explain. I hope you got the point. But another tool that we have is, of course, the rest of the lever mechanism. It's sometimes problematic to be, quick and aware in using the prehensile. We have to use a little extra weight with the movements of the arm on the 4th, monitoring that we have the energy that we want and trying to make that in a easy way and fluid and relaxed way. And here we'll find several points. We already found several points where the 4 is in action, and even in the second half that will start in a minute, I guess, in moment like I have my soft knuckle going up. If I'm not paying attention, easily I will do. So I have to be either more prehensile or kind of more active with my arm to counteract this quick, tiny seeding of the knuckle. So explore that, find your own way to handle that. Let's move on. Once again, of course, it's the same pattern that we had at the beginning, so the left hand is playing in the tenor, contralto, something that will be interconnected with the line in the right hand, right? And you feel the expressivity now we have in this chromatism. You might explore a way of, how to say, highlighting that, perhaps with a crescendo or whatever. So right hand. Here, if you check on the manuscript, you will find my Urtext edition is instead proposing. I'm not sure what Bach really wanted to do. I don't believe that he was unfailable, if it is the right word in English. Of course, it was one of the greatest genius of the mankind, but time to time, if you notice the manuscripts, you come across steps that appear kind of, oh, he was distracted, he was in a hurry, he wrote, thousands of pieces, so how could he do that? I prefer, with my taste, to stick with the edition I have rather than what I found in the manuscript. Without saying, notice the great intensity in this B natural, so don't underplay that. Perhaps some attention would be needed not to overplay the A flat if you can. Perhaps the first time of the second half we might play with una corda, with perhaps a more staccato touch. And why not the second time a more fluid and melting way of playing. Surprise here, right? And now, my suggestion, don't make your life impossible in holding this C exactly until the very last moment, because I don't think this will help music. Instead, be first of all, physically natural, find a comfort zone in this apparently intricate step. Holding the C as possible comfortably without being too strict in it. I feel it's not too difficult to do this finger replacement. Once again. believe it would be a good idea to start right away the very first day with these two bars you're studying, because these two bars are a little bit intricate and will require probably a little more time. And then you search for other segments that are kind of complicated, and I would start with that. You could end it with an attempt of side reading of the entire piece, and doing this will start building up familiarity with the easy lines, and by the time you reach the end of your work and you have spent considerable time on the difficult points, those easy parts will be rather next to a good mastery of them in your work. Let's go on. Would be also in this point to start initially removing the final A flat, because the A flat is the important note, but you don't want to miss the other notes. So initially you kind of shift your attention and weight on the other notes, and then you will take care about adding the final important landing point. Yes, I think I prefer to use the 4 on the A flat, as you see, with all the attention and caution considering which finger we are using, as I tried to explain before. Here I suggest to pay attention and being, I like to say, assertive when you land on the G of the next bar, because you see it's the only note that happens in the bass, so it has to carry, how to say, sufficient energy not to leave a void there. Here the piano is becoming slightly heavier in its action, so we have to be sufficiently, let me say, heavy, energetic, whatever you want to say, however, present in our touch and energy to let the string vibrate and produce the nice sounds we want. that this line is here really leading the situation. So don't make, how to say, the mistake of leaving it not sufficiently hearable. One last consideration regarding the structure of the piece. So we said at the beginning is a diptych, right? But now let's have a closer look at the structure of each half of the diptych. So let's start from the beginning and let's play the first two lines more or less. So as we notice here, there is one line, the right hand, the contralto, soprano, whatever it is, that is talking, is singing, definitely is leading the situations, right? So it could be a presentation, a proposal. The bass is doing nearly nothing, not exactly nothing, as I said, it's very important, but it's kind of listening, observing, assisting, right? And here it stops, really, it kind of listen, what is this fellow saying? And there is this tenor that is kind of perhaps nodding, is the word I think, like following the logic of the right hand, kind of say, oh yes, oh you're right. Then it contributes now with some remark and underlining. He's following the logic. And now something different happens, because you see that he starts developing a more dynamic situation. So all the voices are taking a role. So there is really now a discussion. Is finished the moment of the presentation. It sounds even perhaps a confutation. So maybe the bass that is saying, no, but I don't think that what you said in the first line is really correct. I disagree. And there is the contralto in between the upper part and the bass that is kind of it doesn't know in a way which side to take. So to me, it sounds quite apparent that we have these halves in the half, with a proposition, a proposal, a presentation, and a discussion, a confutation, or perhaps an arguing in the family. And more or less the same thing happened in the second halves, but the presentation is kind of shorter. It's like the two other guys are saying, oh, now don't keep talking as you did before, because we understood your game, and there is something else to say, right? Like, now you stop. And I believe that now, according to my sensitivity, the bass is kind of holding the situation, the control. Is like the parent, perhaps with the two kids, or one of the two parents say, now we do what I say, right? Especially here, it's very assertive. And luckily, back to peace in the family. I hope that some of my considerations will be helpful and useful for your work on this piece. Thanks for watching me until this point. I hope to see you again in my next video.